Hi guys, this is Stormouse03. Welcome to another installment of What's Pushing My Buttons. So it's been a while since I've done one of these, and I decided that I wanted to revisit a favorite subject of mine, achievements or trophies in games. So what really kind of brought this little talk on is yesterday I decided that I was in kind of a masochistic mood, and I wanted to go back and finish the last achievement that I had left on Assassin's Creed Revelations. Now, this achievement is in the DLC, The Lost Archives, otherwise known as a recreation of Hell. So, this DLC is probably, I think, the worst DLC ever. It's one of those that kind of takes the worst aspects of the game, the main game that it's based on, and gives you more of that, because for whatever reason they thought that, you wanted more of the worst part of that game. So what I'm talking about is the first-person platforming, which, let's just say, if Mirror's Edge had platforming like Assassin's Creed Revelations, it wouldn't be getting a sequel. So they took this really horrendous first-person platforming and made an entire DLC out of it. And to top that off, they had this really, really awesome achievement in there where you have to go through this entire little sequence of it without dying. So this one sort of falls into a category that I kind of refer to as the frustrating, not challenging achievement. So it took me it was about a year and a half since I had last played that DLC, and I sort of put this achievement off because I knew that it was just going to be really frustrating, because there's, this section and there are a lot of different things that can kind of clip you and cause you to die, and it's just very sort of cheap, I guess. And I knew that I could do it, but I wasn't looking forward to it. It wasn't one of those things that I was like, yeah, this is going to be an awesome challenge. I just knew it was going to be this exercise in frustration where I knew I could do all of the parts of it, but it was just having a lucky run where, nothing happened that went wrong. And, I did it for probably 2-ish hours and got the achievement yesterday. And it kind of brought up this whole thought about why is it that you have a lot of games where they have a main game that kind of feels like it's fair, they have some challenging things in there, but it all feels very balanced, And then they make a DLC for it, and the DLC feels kind of like the opposite of that, very unbalanced, unfair, and has, stuff in it that just feels like it's meant to be frustrating, feels like almost like they wanted you to be frustrated with it so that you would have to play it over and over again. Or if there was that maybe one achievement on there that was kind of elusive or required a little bit of work, that people wouldn't trade their game in or something. Which sounds really weird to me. I mean, I don't know how many people out there actually care about getting 100% completion in things. I would imagine that it's a pretty small percentage of the gaming community that actually cares about that kind of thing. And I just wonder why you seem to find so many of these achievements and trophies on games where most of the list feels very fair. You have your good mix of unlocks that come just as you progress through the game. You have things that are sort of tied to things that are a little bit challenging, maybe doing something on the hardest difficulty, maybe doing some specific types of things. But all in all, it feels pretty balanced and requires kind of a reasonable amount of time, skill, and effort to be put into it to complete those things. And you find more and more, I think, you have these lists where the majority of the list feels that way, and then there's these one or two that are sort of put in there that feel like it's made to artificially lengthen the time that you're going to spend with that game. And they do that in a couple of ways. Sometimes they do that by putting on that like multiplayer highest rank type thing. They want you to be doing that for the rest of eternity. Sometimes they do it by making some sort of quote-unquote challenge mode that's more about sort of getting lucky. And so it could take you one try, or it could take you, 100 tries, and you still might not be able to do it. And that might keep people coming back, trying to do that thing that it feels like they should be able to do, but they're just not having a good go of it. And that's kind of what this achievement on Assassin's Creed felt like. Oftentimes when you have DLC that is labeled as like a, challenge mode or trials or, this and that kind of thing, challenge maps or, trial mode or time trials, things like that, they often feel that way. Like there's something about that type of either content that's already in the game or that comes later on a DLC that feels like it's just sort of it's a lazy way to, as I said, artificially lengthen the time that someone would spend with a game. And I don't know where that's coming from, because I can't imagine on a lot of these people finding those types of things fun. And now, I'm not saying that a challenge can't be fun, but it's the types of quote-unquote challenges that often are packaged within these modes that feel like they're not really challenges, if you know what I'm saying. They are these exercises in doing something over and over and over again, and not really doing things that much different, or not really learning, not really feeling like you're using your skills or being all that challenged, but this kind of war of attrition of that, well, if I do this enough times, eventually I'll be able to have a run where, I can do the thing that they want me to do. Whether that's not die, whether that's do it in a specific amount of time that's outrageously short, and almost impossible to do within the constraints of the game. And it's those kinds of things that feel to me just sort of strange, right? Like, why would they think that their consumers would think that, this is fun, this is a great challenge, to be asked to do something that is sometimes almost impossible to do with the limits or the mechanics that the game presents you with. Often they are centered around, as I was talking about with Assassin's Creed, a very weak part of the game. I'll give you another example. Dishonored is an amazing game, and they have a really great achievement list. They have some really fun things that are set up to challenge you as far as, not getting upgrades and not killing people and not getting spotted and being sort of sneaky. And all of those things feel like challenges that are fair to do within the constraints of the game. The mechanics work well and lend themselves toward accomplishing those challenges. Now, Dishonored has a piece of DLC called the Dunwall City Trials, and again, it has trials in the name of it, and these trials are really trials of frustration, trials of futility. It's asking you to often do things that the mechanics of the game just aren't really allowing you to do. There's one where you have to take out a bunch of people with only headshots with a crossbow, and the crossbow really just does not handle that well to be asking you to get all these headshots with it. There's another one, my personal favorite, I think, where you are tasked with going through 13 waves of enemies, and you have to kill everything within each wave yourself. And in pretty much all of the waves, the NPCs that spawn for you to kill are from different factions, and so they're also trying to kill each other. And it's very, very easy for them to kill each other, especially on the later waves where you have these tall boys spawning where they can shoot explosive arrows and just, kill something. The amount of randomness within that just feels so unfair to be asking you to do it. And it's not like if you mess up on a wave, you can restart that wave or something. No, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And so you get trapped in this sort of loop of doing something that the mechanics of the game don't really support. The combat is, decent, it's fun, but it doesn't lend itself to killing a bunch of enemies that are trying to kill each other all that quickly. It just feels like it's set up so that you'll have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over again until you win that war of attrition that, okay, finally this was the wave where they shot the explosive arrow and it didn't hit anything before I could kill them. This was the one where the right types of enemies spawned together, or they spawned in the right place so that, my trap that I set up for them here actually got this one, and I was able to deal with these over here. And it just feels like that entire DLC is set up like that, with things like that, where there are a bunch of exercises in doing things that the game really doesn't support. The mechanics are not precise enough in order to ask you to do a lot of those things. And I just wonder about, was it just a quick money grab? Were the publishers telling the company that they needed to put out a DLC really quickly? And this is something that, it's like a fallback, something that's easy for them to make, and that can be packaged as this, DLC that people should pay for? Was it an idea that, okay, well, this will lengthen the, endurance of the game and make people want to come back and play it to sort of master these trials, and we give them these sort of nearly impossible things to do so that they'll keep coming back? I just don't know. Is it that the developers don't understand what's good about their games, and instead of giving us more of that stuff, more of the good stuff, they, give us these things that, really no one's wanting? Which is kind of a scary thought, right? That they could not know their audience well enough to recognize what is fun about this game that we made. Let's give them more of that, instead of something that feels like a gimmick to kind of, take advantage of the competitiveness of gamers. And maybe that's just the thing. It feels like something that draws me to games is being twisted and taken advantage of in these situations, because I do like a good challenge. I do like to feel like I'm overcoming the problems that are set before me by the game. I like to play something and feel like I'm good at it. And when they label these things as like challenge modes, it calls to that desire, right? It calls to that competitive nature within a lot of us and says, hey, if you're good at this game, you should be able to do this. And to me, I'm finding more and more that that's all just nonsense, because, you know, you can be a really good sports player, let's just say. You can be a really good basketball player or a really good baseball player. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to, you know, hit 100 home runs in a row. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get, you know, half-court shots every single time within, you know, a 5-minute period. You can be really good at something without doing these sort of nonsensical things that a lot of these quote-unquote challenge modes ask you to do. And I think that it feels sort of cheap. It feels like it's cheapening the experience for me. I think a lot of people get a bad rap when they complain about stuff like this, because it's like, oh, you're just whining because you can't do it. And that's not true. You know, I've done plenty of things that have been frustrating and annoying, and, you know, case in point, the stupid Assassin's Creed Revelations thing. And, you know, did I feel like I was better at the game because I was able to do that? No. Did I feel a sense of, you know, oh my gosh, yes, I did this thing and it was amazing and I'm awesome and let me put this badge of honor here? No, I didn't. And I don't normally feel like that when I complete modes like this. And it's a shame, because it should feel that way. When something is labeled as a challenge, when you overcome that challenge, you should feel a sense of accomplishment. You should feel a sense that, you know, I improved at this to the point where I was able to do this thing. Not a sense of, well, I did it 1,000,000 times and I finally was able to do it because, you know, this thing is just so stupid, ridiculous, and it's asking for a ridiculous thing for you to do. I think the happiest part of earning that achievement was deleting the DLC from my hard drive and thinking, I never have to touch that ever again. And I never have to think about it. And now it's gone. And that's not how that should feel. When you complete a challenge, you should feel awesome and you should be like, yeah, I did this thing, and, you know, here, let me show you how I did this thing, and let me, you know, let me show you how to do it, and let's compare our, you know, strategies, and let's compare our skills. Not this, you know, sense of, ugh, I never want to touch that or think about it or hear about it ever again, because, you know, you don't feel that sort of excitement and that sense of accomplishment. And so I'd love to hear about some of the challenge modes that you guys have experienced, whether they felt fair to you, whether there are some that you think are a good example of what a challenge mode should be, whether you feel, as I do, like some of these things are meant to sort of pull your strings and kind of tug at the competitor in some of us and sort of take advantage of that in order to get us to do this ridiculous stuff over and over and kind of artificially lengthen the life of the game. Or if you think that they're not like that, if you think that, you know, often they are pretty fair and that they do provide a good challenge, or that they do provide a fun reason to keep playing the game. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. So that's what's pushing my buttons this week. Thanks for watching.